Welcome to the newest addition to my World War I playlist. This time, I'll talk about the Ottoman Empire and its holy war against the Entente. As usual, we have to take a look at the period that preceded the Great War to understand what was going on and why the Ottomans sided with the Central Powers. The empire was in turmoil in the 1900s. The Young Turk Revolution in 1908 ended autocratic rule and established a multi-party political system with Turkish, Jewish, Arab nationalist, and Armenian organizations. The next year, after a failed monarchist plot, Sultan Abdul Hamid was deposed. He was followed by his brother, Mehmed V. While Austria-Hungary officially annexed Bosnia-Herzegovina, military reforms were implemented, but these came too late to prevent a defeat against Italy in 1911, after which the remaining territories in North Africa were lost, along with the Dodecanese Islands. In 1912, the First Balkan War erupted, in which most Balkan countries fought together against the Ottomans, almost pushing them out of Europe. The peninsula was lost, although a year later, Edirne and its surroundings were recovered as everybody ganged up on the enlarged Bulgarian state. At the same time, two coups d'états took place. In the first, the New Freedom and Accord Party removed the Committee of Union and Progress from power, claiming that the latter rigged the election. However, in 1913, the CUP orchestrated its own coup, assassinating the Minister of War and forcing the Grand Vizier to resign. The government was now controlled by the three pashas, Enver, Talat, and Jamal, but this didn't change the fact that the empire was in decline. It needed time to modernize, but the Great War broke out, and the potential gains were too big to ignore. The CUP believed that alliance with Britain would guarantee the survival of the empire, but the British preferred neutralization, financial control, and the implementation of more reforms, while Russia was eyeing Constantinople and the Straits. A full Russian invasion was ruled out for now. Russia strengthened its Caucasian army and proposed European supervision for Ottoman Armenia. Germany sent another military mission to help modernize the army, but they also helped develop the infrastructure, although they did not finish the Baghdad Railway as it angered Britain. A secret agreement was signed with Germany against Russia. However, it did not require military involvement, so when the Great War broke out, the Ottoman government first declared neutrality. On Winston Churchill's recommendation, the British requisitioned two warships that were being built for the Ottomans. Germany then offered two of its own ships, SMS Goeben and SMS Breslau, as replacements. After a British pursuit, these ships sailed to Constantinople and were transferred to the Ottoman Navy. The pro-British faction was now weakened, but diplomatic talks continued. A secret alliance with Bulgaria was signed in August 1914. By September, the pro-German faction in the government improved its positions, relying on German presence. The Turkish Straits were closed to international shipping, damaging the Russian economy. Encouraged by Enver Pasha, at the end of October, the navy bombarded the Russian coast on the Black Sea. 10 days later, Mehmed V declared war on Britain, France, and Russia. Britain then promised to give Constantinople to Russia after the war, partly to keep Russia out of Central Europe. A holy war was proclaimed. All Muslims were called to rise against the infidel. Critically, the Sharif of Mecca refused to participate, fearing a British blockade and bombardment, while the wider Islamic world was not enthusiastic either. The country itself was not united. Plots and assassination attempts against German delegations, members of the CUP, and Enver Pasha himself showed internal division. The infrastructure certainly wasn't ready for war. Transporting troops and supplies to the Russian border in the Caucasus took many weeks. Mesopotamia was even harder to reach. Still, fighting broke out on several fronts against Russia in the east, and the British in Persia, Iraq, and Egypt. Special privileges to foreign nationals were revoked, foreign debt repayments were cancelled. In the Caucasus, the initial Ottoman offensive failed after losing 100,000 soldiers. Russia gained ground, but both sides had to focus on other fronts, so this sector was quiet for months. Frustration, anger, and a new government policy led to the Armenian genocide, which is a controversial topic even today. Non-Turkish sources claim that 1.5 million Armenians were eliminated through mass killings, death marches, forced labor, starvation, etc., but Turkey refuses to recognize the process as genocide. Elsewhere, the war and famine claimed millions of lives even without genocide. On the Persian front, where relatively small Turkish, Iranian, and British forces fought each other, 2 million civilians died. Conquering Egypt could not be carried out. The attack was stopped at the Suez Canal. The British launched an invasion from Kuwait through modern-day Iraq, but initially the Mesopotamian campaign was also a failure. Basra was taken in 1914, but the next year, Kut was besieged by the Ottomans. It finally fell in early 1916 in what was described as the greatest British military defeat. Back in 1915, Anzac troops landed near Constantinople at Gallipoli to knock Turkey out of the war. This was another brilliant idea by Winston Churchill. Instead of a quick victory, it turned into another stalemate. After 8 months, and losing 300,000 soldiers, the campaign was abandoned. The defenders, assisted by German officers and heavy guns, and led by Mustafa Kemal, were victorious. Kemal later became founder and president of the new republic. Smaller Turkish units also participated in the Romanian and Saloniki campaigns, but they also fought in Galicia with Austro-Hungarian troops against Russia. Austria-Hungary sent its own troops to Palestine and the Sinai to help its ally. Egypt, which was now a British protectorate, continued to resist, relying on British help. The canal could not be taken, traffic was also not seriously disrupted, Colonel von Kressenstein had to wait for German troops, while the Ottoman railway was extended to the Negev desert. While in the Caucasus, extreme cold and frostbite was the main enemy, here the constant heat, flies, sanitation, and very long supply lines resulted in constant suffering, even between the actual fighting. Austrian, German, and Ottoman units struggled against Australian, Indian, New Zealander, and other forces in the Battle of Romani in August 1916, but they had to retreat, so the canal was now secured by the British. 1917 proved to be the turning point. The British advanced in Mesopotamia along the Tigris River. Baghdad fell in March. The Arab Revolt, which had begun in mid-1916, slowly spread. Mecca and Jeddah fell, then Sharif Hussein's third son, Faisal, attacked Medina. In the Sinai, the Central Powers were slowly pushed back despite increased German and Austro-Hungarian assistance. Rafah fell in January, Gaza became the next target, but the infrastructure had to be improved first. The Sykes-Picot Agreement was signed. According to the document, Britain would take Palestine, while France would get Syria after the war. For now, both sides received reinforcements and prepared for the next phase. In the Caucasus, the Russian advance resulted in the fall of Erzurum and Trabzon back in 1916. However, this was halted by the revolution that took place in February 1917. The Russian army disintegrated, a new Armenian state was created, followed by various other entities in 1918. Ottoman forces recovered all lost territories and crossed the old border. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk then resulted in more territorial gains and the creation of Transcaucasia, which was supposed to be independent, but it soon turned against the Ottomans. Batumi was then occupied, and soon after, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan all declared independence. The oil fields at Baku were important to Germany. They even clashed with the Ottomans and threatened to withdraw all support. But then Germany collapsed, so the Ottomans were able to occupy more territory until their own government had to sue for peace. Before this happened, though, fighting had to stop on all the other fronts. In Mesopotamia, the British army was mostly inactive throughout 1918, but then launched one last offensive in October and continued to Mosul even after the armistice, despite Turkish protests. In Palestine, the lines held until October 1917. Both sides reorganized their forces, then the British advanced to Jaffa and took Jerusalem in December. Jericho followed in February 1918, as the last reserves of the Ottomans were spent. The focus shifted to the Western Front, but after Arab raids, the British advance continued in September. Damascus and Aleppo fell in October with no resistance, while the Ottomans were busy sending a new force to the Caucasus. The Ottoman Empire soon sued for peace. It did mobilize 2.6 million men and lost around 1 million, while another million deserted. The Entente was delayed and distracted by Ottoman resistance, but in the end, the sick man of Europe could not beat the much more advanced great powers. The government was forced to sign the Treaty of Sèvres, which gave significant territories to Armenia and Greece, while the Middle East was divided between Britain and France. Even Constantinople was occupied, but a new war against Greece started, and Mustafa Kemal became the leader of the nationalist resistance against the Ottoman government. It would take 4 more years to abolish the empire and sign a new peace treaty that established the borders we know today and recognized the new Republic of Turkey. I will continue both series with more episodes, so stay tuned. And subscribe if you find these videos informative. See you in the next one.